Emergency podcast here at the Hawk's Eye View. Drew Shipley here, Andrew Barber on the other side of the country. Breaking news: Kayden Proctor will enter the transfer portal again. He can't technically enter the transfer portal till April 15th. There's more questions than answers right now, Andrew. Who's been paid what and how much and why, and if he thinks he had a hard time when he committed to Alabama the first time, I think he's in for a rude awakening, and rightfully so, Andrew.
Yeah, I'll just say this flat out. He's not going to be welcomed back here. There won't be any well-wishers. There won't be any, oh, he's just a kid who's maybe a little bit confused about his decision. No, that's bullshit. This is an adult man who knows full well what he's doing and is making these choices as an adult man.
Yeah, I've hated the narrative of, and it's the same people too, Andrew. It's the same people that, well, they're just kids. Oh, they're just kids. Well, those same people that are saying they're just kids. Well, those kids need to get paid too. They need to be paid by the schools to play their sport. Fuck you, man. No, you don't. You get free school. You get free room and board. You get an education, Andrew. They're student athletes. That's the freaking word. Student athlete. Period. I don't give a shit.
They're people who commit actions, and actions have consequences.
Yeah.
The consequences of the action of entering the transfer portal and leaving Iowa is that you're going to receive hate from Iowa fans. Sorry, the consequences of your own actions will come back to bite you. Now, he may not care all that much because he's probably going to get a fat bag of money to go to Alabama, back to Alabama. So I'm sure it doesn't bother him at all. But what this looks like on paper, Drew, is a man who knew he could get money from Iowa by entering the transfer portal after Saban retired, getting the money from Iowa, taking the money, and running. Now, that's maybe not what happened, but that's what it looks like to me on the outside. That is a bad look. I'm not saying that's exactly what happened, but that's almost tantamount to stealing.
We will likely never hear anything from Kayden Proctor's camp, but who the public needs to hear from right now, Andrew, is the Swarm Collective. They need some transparency of what has happened to their public money that was donated willingly to an organization for this specific player, right? For the most part, the big push in December, right? The match up to $50,000 or whatever it was. Like we all knew who it was for, right? The message boards were all out there. Oh, the Swarm needs money to bring Kayden Proctor back home, right? This, that, the other. I think the Swarm needs to do themselves a favor, get ahead of this now, or you will lose all credibility or any future money that people are already upset about. That money may have come and gone, flushed back to Tuscaloosa. It may or may not have, but I think the facts of that need to come out sooner than later from the Swarm.
Totally with you there, and that's my biggest concern too. Is like I think there's folks like you and I and probably others who understand the Swarm and its mission and what it's doing, and we don't doubt Brad Heinrichs at all. But there's people who jumped on board knowing that Proctor was a possibility. And those people who were kind of on the fringe about it before, who jumped in, are now saying, what? Where'd my money go? Am I getting my money back? What's going on? So, yeah, just absolutely ridiculous. And I feel bad for Brad. I don't envy Brad in this scenario because I know he's just trying to do the best that he can. Brad doesn't get paid. He doesn't get a single dime from the Swarm. He does this all pro bono, as they say in the lawyer world, and he does a great job. And that's kind of the person that I feel bad for. I feel bad for, people who donated thinking my money is going to five-star offensive tackle Kayden Proctor. And this is going to be the impetus that brings Iowa to a spot where we can make the college football playoffs. Maybe we still can, Drew. And maybe we're just fine because my understanding is that Ken Proctor showed up to exactly 0 workouts.
Yeah, spring football's scheduled to start next week, right?
Yeah. Yep. Next week. And there's a team meeting tonight where I'm sure Kirk Ferentz, if it hasn't happened already, will address this during the team meeting. I know there were teammates that were skeptical of Kayden Proctor, and unfortunately, those teammates turned out to be right. And it sounds to me, based off the Document article that came out, Kayden Proctor went on a spring break trip with his Alabama buddies and decided on a spring break trip with his Alabama buddies that he's going back to Alabama. I don't know if we necessarily want someone like that who can just be swayed with the wind. If you just blow with the wind, then I'm not sure that you're really the type of person that belongs in the Iowa football program.
Yeah, so I'm going to call these people young people. I'm not calling them kids. I'm going to call them young people. Young people are easily persuaded and talked into things, Andrew, right? Especially amongst your peer group of like-minded individuals. So say student athletes here. They were your teammates for the last football season. Like, I can see where your change of heart could be swayed in that point in your life. However, like there are more questions than answers. Again, contractually, what does the contract look like? How much were they paid, if at all? The public needs to know that in general, and the swarm donors especially need to know that moving forward. You know, maybe swarm needs to clean up how their contracts are written. You know,
Yeah. I mean, this is gonna happen until we eventually get to a place where there's contracts for college athletes. Exactly what you're saying. I think that's the road you're going down.
Yeah, and it turns out that in its current form, you cannot contractually obligate a student athlete to play a sport at your school. That's not
yet.
That's not how it's shaped right now.
Right. Exactly.
So I mean, I guess then why does it matter if student athletes are going to car dealerships or Poncheros or Hy-Vee, or why does it even matter? And then you tie the name University of Iowa to your NIL deal. No, that's bullshit too. And this has been my narrative since we started this podcast, Andrew. You knew that I did not care for the structure of how NIL is operating. I do appreciate what Brad Heinrichs is trying to do because it is keeping up with the Joneses. Everybody's doing it, and you have to do it, adapt or die situation, right? But here we are. Like, we roll out a half product, like not completely ready to go. We rolled it out because it had to be done. And Cyclone Hulk, Chris, obviously making a good point here. What happened? What happens if he didn't get the money promised and they crowdsourced it up? That's exactly what they did. They did a campaign in December to bring this man specifically to Iowa City, and it may or may not have been that, like, the tipping point for him to come back.
Well, it's a good point from Chris. However, I happen to know that he did get the money that he was expected. The decision has nothing to do with Iowa doing something wrong. Iowa followed through on their promises, is what I'm trying to say in regards to now.
And this just reinforces my standpoint, Andrew, of this money shouldn't even be coming from us to begin with. They were already spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in premium seating at Carver Hawkeye Arena and Kinnick Stadium and yada, yada, yada. The home teams make average $20-30 million a game to host a game in their stadium, which is why we've always prioritized having 7 home games, which is why we play a shithole team in our non-con every season, so we can have that extra 7th game and $20-30 million on top of that. Yeah. But yet they have the nerve to ask us to pay for these players that then end up fucking taking the money and running anyway, Andrew. Like, there's have no grounds or recourse to get it back. Like,
they don't.
So I mean, I don't know if these contracts need to be like dated as such as, this contract does not start until your sports season starts. Right. Like, or this is the way the contract had to read to bring him there in the first place, right? Like it was a handshake, and my handshake is as strong as oak. You've seen Jerry Maguire, Andrew? You seen the movie where he shakes Tom Cruise's hand, and my promise is as strong as oak. And he went with the other fucking agent, Bob Sugar, anyway. This is how this feels.
Yeah, right, exactly. And like you said, I don't think fans should be footing the bill, but unfortunately, that's the reality of the scenario that we're in, because the NCAA doesn't want to, do the right thing by the players and pay them from the school's athletic departments directly, which is how it should be, because athletic departments make hundreds of millions, depending on the biggest brands, maybe even close to $1 billion on their own, right? From TV money, from ticket revenue, from playing in high profile games, all of that, right? So the money should not be coming from fans, but it is. And, really, I would have exercised some caution and said, Kayden, you get your money when you play a game for Iowa on a Saturday. Just because of the history, it's like, we trust you, but we don't trust you really, because not everybody does this too with NIL deals. Like Cade McNamara, Eric All, those guys came to Iowa on NIL deals. They followed through. They played games, albeit they got injured. We've got other guys that have come into the program. Caleb Brown is another one, right? Caleb Brown was a highly recruited guy. So it's not like this for everybody. Not everybody is just jumping around and dipping. But the other problem is the NCAA made that ruling that said you can basically transfer at any time now without penalty and as many times as you want. And that's really the problem here, is you should only get a one-time transfer without sitting out while you're an undergrad. And Ken Proctor is an undergrad who's now transferred from Alabama at the end of last year, from Iowa in the spring this year. So 2 transfers in less than a calendar year should not be allowed. He should have to sit out at least a year.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem, Andrew. You kind of prefaced it. Where's the accountability in any of this? The accountability to the school, the accountability onto the student athlete who is an adult. I'm sorry. They're not just kids. These kids are getting more money than you and I combined in a salary.
Yeah. We'll ever see. More money than you and I will ever see.
To not play football, because you can't do that. Because you can't pay them to play their sport.
Right. So, yeah, these kids are getting more money than you and I will ever see. Therefore, they are now like NFL players and should have accountability for their actions. I mean, the NFL has rules and contracts, right, that prevent players from doing this type of thing. College football needs the same thing. College sports probably in general needs the same thing, because then this will just happen to someone else in basketball too. I don't even know if we're not the first school that this has happened to. So I'm not acting like Iowa's the first one to have a player do this. Just it's notable because it's such a high profile player.
Like, it makes you think, right? So he can't enter the portal officially until April 15th.
Right.
Okay, so that's nearly a month away. So let's pump the brake one time on this before then we just continue to bash the young adult. Is there any able to reverse course again, to keep him there? We have 27 days.
Yeah, I've thought about that.
Or does Kirk say we don't need your non-committal ass in my program? And
Kirk Ferentz did have a statement that he said, "We're sorry to hear it."
Oh, he did say something.
We're sorry to hear that Kayden has informed us of his intention to transfer. We wish him the best in the future. And that's probably about all you're going to hear publicly from Kirk Ferentz about it. I bet Kirk is not pleased behind closed doors, and I don't blame him. And I bet he has stronger words that he's saying to the team that we'll never hear publicly. But publicly, that's about all you're going to get out of Kirk Ferentz, and I understand it because he doesn't want to, I mean, I know they didn't burn bridges the first time, but that ship has sailed, bridges burned now. If you're coming back to Iowa now, it's to Ames, to UNI, to Drake. I don't even know. Yeah, I mean, you're not coming back to Iowa City. You're just not. Sorry, but they're not doing that again. So they were willing to keep the door open the first time, and that's another part of this is Iowa had every right with how things went down the first time to just say, okay, you made your choice. That's it. Peace out. See ya. But when things weren't going well for him at Alabama, which Iowa self-reported and got in trouble for, Tyler Barnes reached out to Kayden Proctor and said, we're with you. Hang in there. And it's like, did that mean nothing? Right? Apparently that means nothing. I don't mean to keep bashing the kid, but that apparently the people who stuck by him when they had every reason not to.
Young adult, not kid. Young adult.
Sorry. Everyone who stood by this young adult when they had every reason to be done with him.
Yeah, so there's
slap in the face.
So there's two things, Andrew. The whole phrase of shame on me first time, shame on you second time type deal, right?
Sure.
So we gave him the benefit of the doubt the first time. So it was really a shame on us the first time for criticizing him for going to Alabama, right? That he had his right to do so.
Sure.
Up front. But then to recourse it all again a year later and put the fan base and the swarm and all that through this again. Shame on him, man. Shame on him, period. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah. Shame on us. Yeah. But also, I think we did the right thing in not burning those bridges because, everybody deserves forgiveness, second chances. I firmly believe in forgiveness and second chances, but also, I don't really think there should be a third chance at Iowa, and there won't be. There won't be, but you can eventually. I'll come around to forgiving Kayden Proctor for his choice here, right? Maybe not right now in the heat of the moment when it upsets me a little bit, but eventually I'll come around to it. But also, you don't forget, right? When people treat you kind of poorly, you don't forget. And in my eyes, he's treated the Iowa program and his fellow teammates poorly twice.
Until now, Andrew, what we are upset about in this current day would have seemed petty, right? Before NIL, before collective, before pay for play, before all these commercials or whatever they can do, this, that, the other. We were petty about people and their school choice, right? Because we were under the assumption that we're not paying players. They're not getting special treatment, this, that, the other. A choice was a choice, and you were right. They were there until they graduated or they got a one-time transfer and they sat out the year after that, right? But now it's personal because you're involving, I can't say public money because it's not public money. It's a private institution, non-for-profit organization out of your own pocket. So, Andrew, this hits close to home to you because you donate on a monthly basis to Swarm. I want to know how you feel financially. Do you feel violated in your wallet as well? Because I would feel, it would be personal now. Like it had been petty before because money was not a thing. But I want to know how you feel now because I don't find it to be petty anymore. Not when you're involving people's money.
It's personal. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure the University of Alabama has their address listed somewhere, so I'll just send them a letter with asking for money every month. I donated in this amount to the Iowa Swarm. Please, if you could send this to Kayden Proctor's mailbox, I'll just ask for my money back, and I'll just send him a bill. See if he sends me like a 20 or a 50 back in the mail. I'm sorry. I don't know. I might send him a letter and just take him. I work for Wells Fargo, a mortgage company, right? When people are past due on their mortgages, we call them to collect. I'm just called to collect.
There you go.
There we go. No, I mean, yeah, that's why maybe I'm getting a little bit more heated, a little bit more personally involved in this one, right? And why I'm so angry about it and why I feel like I have a right to be angry. And you'll say, well, donating money doesn't give you the right. Well, yeah,
Bullshit.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, it does. What are you
No,
talking
yeah.
about?
Yeah, there's people who would say that. And yeah, that's exactly what I would say is bullshit. That does, you know. But what I do know is that, it's $100,000. That wasn't all of the money that was promised to him. There was other things in place that, as time went on, he would get more money from the NIL, $100,000 up front, but then more as time went on. So that money that was going to go to him as time went on, I guess will just be routed to someone else who enters the transfer portal in the spring, probably another quarterback like we've talked about, and probably some wide receiver help. So I feel bad about the $100,000 that's essentially been lost, unless he decides he's going to do the right thing and pay it back, which I don't know. Maybe he won't. Maybe he will. And surprise the heck out of me. And then I'll look like a fool. But I'm willing to take that chance and blast him and take the chance. But yeah, I'm confident that money will go to help the Iowa football team. Still, in some capacity.
Do you think the Swarm owes you transparency? Like I've kind of called for at the beginning of this emergency press conference. Do you feel like they owe you some transparency?
Yes, but I have confidence that Brad will provide it. It may not happen on Twitter, but I know that Brad frequents all the message boards where a lot of Swarm NIL members hang out. And maybe Brad will make a statement publicly on Twitter, and I will expect that to be nothing but class too. I'm sure Brad's fired up right now, so he's trying not to fire off tweets because he's trying not to say what he really thinks too. I'm just a fan. I'm not in charge of anything, so I can get on here and say whatever the heck I think. David Larson, how active is Iowa in the transfer portal? They're active enough to fill their needs, is the way I would put that. Last year, they felt like they had a need at quarterback and linebacker, and I don't feel like
offensive tackle.
Offensive tackle, but I'm more referencing the Cade McNamara, Eric Gall, Nick Jackson group of transfers that they brought in. They felt like there was a need there. They also explored defensive back transfers as well. They felt like there was a depth need there also. And then they went and got Caleb Brown. They felt like there was a wide receiver need, which there clearly obviously was and still is. And so Iowa still feels like quarterback is a need. They're going to go for quarterback in the spring portal when it opens in April. They're going to go for wide receiver again when the portal opens is my understanding. So, yeah, they're going to go for maybe offensive line again. Maybe they'll look at offensive linemen that hit the portal. It may not be Kayden Proctor level, but they might get 3 or 4 guys that are help the collective overall. Yeah, I'd rather go get a top flight wide receiver that's committed to being here, honestly. I don't know if left tackle is nice, but it doesn't make or break a football team at the end of the day.
We've gotten the top receivers before, but we never get them the ball, Andrew. And I don't know if I have any hope that we do continuously, because now what? Bud Meyer's now the wide receiver coach. Anyway, I don't even want to get off the tangent there. David, you have a great question about how active Iowa's going to be in the transfer portal. Once we get through March Madness here, the women cut down the nets in Cleveland. We will have time to see who's available in the spring portal, right? Because we won't know officially till April 15th. Right. I would expect what Andrew said, offensive line for sure, and at least one number one target wide receiver for sure. Defense, I think we're set.
Possibly defensive back depth if you wanted to.
Sure.
Possibly. But yeah,
let's wrap it up, Andrew. This is emergency. We're going to do this again tomorrow.
Yeah.
I mean, not about Kayden Proctor. We're going to move on. I feel like we've went through all the stages of grief live with you in the last 26 minutes. So appreciate you joining us, because I'm sure that all the other podcasters that are Iowa based are probably going through their range of emotions as well. But we wanted to get out here and ahead of it and react in real time. I feel like we kept it fairly professional and factual. So I think that's all I got right now, Andrew. It's unfortunate. I look at it as thievery of money. The people that donate to the Swarm, I'm sorry, Swarm, if you're listening, Brad, I implore you to get ahead of this on a PR level of reassuring your donors that being a good steward of money is important to all of us. So that's it. That's what I got.
Yeah, that's a great place to end it. I'll end my thoughts by saying this. Kayden Proctor, you got all the money, but in the end, you're sort of bankrupt. Not financially, but you're bankrupt in a way. And
he's bankrupt in goodwill. He has no goodwill left.
Yep. So that's it. We'll see you back here tomorrow night. We'll move on to happier subjects. Enjoy the NIT tonight.
Oh, hey, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.